Hi everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof, and today on the show we're talking all about video creation, how you go from that initial idea to recording to editing and ultimately publishing and promoting that work. So that's coming up today. We are going out live to all the various places, so we'd love to hear from you where you're actually watching. That would be awesome. Sam, how has your week been? I understand there's been some big things happening for you in the last week or so.
Yeah, it's been good. It was my wife's birthday yesterday, and so shout out to Amanda. It was
Happy
a
birthday,
pretty,
Amanda.
yeah, it was a pretty chill birthday, but we did like sushi and stuff like that. This is a picture of us at the Fur Ball, which happened the weekend prior. So yeah, that's a much bigger sort of thing, where this is the Kitten Rescue annual gala event, which is their fundraising event. And we, as sort of prolific fosters of theirs, have lucked into every couple of years or so, somebody donates tickets on our behalf. So thank you to Larry, who donated my ticket. I don't know who did Amanda's, but yeah, it's their big annual fundraiser. They have like $100,000 goal, and a lot of like, who's of cat rescue are there. The Paw Project showed up, and Nathan the Cat Lady, and he was the MC, and Blasco, who's a musician. Some people may know who Blasco is, and some other stuff like that. Yeah, it's just a good time, and you get an open bar and a free vegan meal and a gift bag and all sorts of goodies. So it was fun. Yeah, that's pretty
And
much how the week was. Yeah.
a night with the without the kids too, which
Without
is
the kids.
probably
Yeah. We
quite
lucked
unusual.
into actually having a babysitter turn up. Like all of our regular babysitters aged out and went on to college. So we were in like panic mode. And then one of Amanda's co-teachers at the school she works at was like, hey, my kid is old enough. And we're like, that's great. We'll do it. Take the risk. Thanks, Insomnia,
Nice.
for the birthday wish. I'll pass that along. Yeah.
Okay.
How was your week?
My week's been pretty good actually. I took some time off from my day job and I did some extra content creation, which I know sounds really weird to other people, but it genuinely makes me happy when I can do that. And I've been creating a few extra videos and stuff. There have been some really weird things happening, and I don't know if Mercury is in the microwave, as they say on TikTok. But between LinkedIn and YouTube this week, and I just want to bring some people into the conversation as well. So, Saeed, one thing I noticed during the week was that if I create an event on LinkedIn and I schedule that through StreamYard, it's fine. But the minute I go to actually edit the event or add a speaker, it actually completely changed the time on me. And it was really sort of encouraging to discover earlier today that I'm not the only person that this is happening to. So if you are watching over on LinkedIn, there isn't a lot happening in the About section, but there is sort of in the initial post. And Said's also asking about YouTube. If you wanted to, you could... I think there's actually a link in there, but... let me just shove this up on the screen for a second. So if you want to head over to my YouTube channel, it is at johnlacey.com/YouTube. That will redirect you if you want to check that out. But essentially...
Sorry. Go on. We have dueling YouTubes. Go on, John.
We do. That's an interesting thing I don't think people understand, is that we both do this show together, but it both goes out to separate properties of ours. But again, I just want to touch on the weird YouTube thing that happened earlier today. And that's if I go to the community tab, it tells me I have no videos. I have no access to anybody's videos. I can't post or share a video. It is so bizarre.
I just posted the community thing because I was waiting for our show to start, thinking that it actually being live might bypass that issue. It did not. It still was unable to find it, but if I just pasted the URL into the post part itself, it actually did create an embed from that.
I mean, I tried to do that, but it gave me no joy whatsoever. But again, that's just the joy of technology, so I guess we've got to roll with it. But again, thank you to everybody who's joining us. Thank you to Insomnia Doodles, who actually indulged me in this ridiculous thing that I keep trying to make happen, which is team live or team replay. So if you want to throw that into the chat, I would appreciate that. That's awesome. But today we're talking all about actually creating videos. And I know there are a lot of steps with this, and it can be quite overwhelming for a lot of people, especially when they're starting out. We want to sort of break this down into 4 basic categories. And again, we won't give you all the answers. We're just going to give you some things that you might want to think about and things that have worked well for us today.
Mhm.
But again, it would be great to hear from people in the chat if you are, if you do make videos or if you do live stream. Let us know about what you're doing. We'd love to hear that. But I guess first of all, Sam, like when it comes to the ideation of this, like I think it's worthwhile sort of reflecting on what is the goal of the video. So what are you hoping that it will do? Because, you know, maybe it's just to entertain, maybe it's to educate, maybe it's to promote something, maybe it's to
Sure.
build awareness. But I know that you do a lot of different content between different things that Cute Avalanche and Soundproof.tv and all of that wonderful stuff. How do you sort of think about, you know, when it comes to what is my video actually going to do? How will I know it's successful? How do you think about that?
Sure. I mean, I think, everything's different. Every niche is like, a different category of what you're going to do. And you have to make sort of a choice between how specific do I want to get in this particular thing, or how broad do I want to keep it? How, current event versus, evergreen, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things to really take into account. But I think when you're initially trying to figure out, like, what video to make, if you've got a community, even if it's one other person, that's your sounding board. Like whatever questions they have, that's the video to make. The person who's going to show up to watch, you're making videos for them. And if you don't have that person, figure out who those people are, right? Be like, I'm doing cat videos. It's people who probably don't have cats of their own. Maybe they do, but probably they don't. And what video can I make for them? Yeah, so I think that's the starting point, is really just seeing who you have in your community or creating a facsimile of that community.
Absolutely, and I think, yeah, and again, for the benefit of anyone that doesn't know, like Sam and his wife Amanda, who we saw earlier, they are involved in cuteavalanche.com, which is all about sort of fostering kittens and also sharing that work via video and live streaming. And I think it's a great example because potentially you have people and you know they want to hear more about caring for their cats, and that's certainly something that happens in your podcast, just kidding around, but also definitely those people that would like cats but can't have them because maybe they're in a tiny apartment or maybe they're allergic, but they just want to see the cuteness.
Yeah.
So Saeed is saying that I try to create videos, mostly short clips for LinkedIn. DaVinci Resolve is my go-to tool for editing. DaVinci Resolve is a great program. Like it's bizarre to me that it is literally free. The only thing I would say is there is a bit of a learning curve there. So you do need to invest some time, but I think it's probably definitely worth doing so. Just a big shout out to some of the people joining us in the chat today. So Michelle J. Raymond is saying g'day because she's in Sydney nearby. Jamie, also on LinkedIn, is saying that LinkedIn is really glitchy today. Hello, guys. So again, it seems to be, you know, I keep joking about Mercury being in the microwave, but there seems to be something happening this week. And Insomnia Doodles wrote, Team Live is the best. I'd like to see someone try to argue otherwise.
Well, they would be very slow about it.
Yes.
Anyway.
Although some people do that. And Ender Gaming actually often sort of drops in after the event and says hi, which we appreciate that. You know, we realize that's the thing about live. You're not always in a position to join us, but, you know, it's worth checking out. So I guess getting back to the ideation. So, you know, we've spoken a little bit about the goals and the audience, but I think, you know, it's worthwhile thinking about the kind of video that you're creating and whether it's long form content, whether it's short form content, even, you know, getting back to some of those aspects, like is it entertaining? Are you trying to impart some wisdom or some knowledge there? And think about, you know, what you actually need to do, because if you know what those goals are ahead of time, you can really plan towards it.
Right. I
Um,
think when we talk about goals, you should really, you know, put it out there. Like if you have something very obvious that is a sales driven goal for your video, put that right up at the top. Be like, this is, my goal is to get X number of people signed up to my newsletter. My goal is to sell t-shirts. My goal is to sell an e-course, whatever it is. Then that's the goal. And then you take that to, create ideas for your community that funnel to that sale.
Absolutely. And again, it'd be great to actually get Michelle onto this show at some point,
Sure.
because she talks about social selling a lot, and you do need to actually make that ask if you are trying to sell a good or service. It may not be every piece of content that you put out there, but it's certainly worthwhile doing that. Um, although it's not uncommon for people to go, I don't know what to talk about. I
Sure.
had no idea where to start. And again, if you are sort of using video to showcase your own expertise, there's a good chance you'll know a lot about a particular topic. And sometimes I think there is that danger that maybe you know a little bit too much. Maybe you go too deep and too thorough too early, and maybe your audience isn't ready for that. So again, it's worthwhile checking in with the audience, but I just want to talk about a few tools that can be quite useful in terms of planning your content and
Mm-hmm.
also just seeing what people are actually asking about. So first of all, we've got this one here, which is Answer the Public. And again, for this particular tool, you can search for a particular topic. You can sort of specify a language and a particular geographical area. And essentially, this will give you information about what people are searching for in relation to that topic. It also does give you some cost per click information. So if you are trying to optimize for specific SEO terms or do some paid advertising, that's there as well. This actually does have a free plan, and so does the next one I'll show you in a second. And you can do sort of 3 searches a day. So the other one, which I've only just discovered this week, but it's kind of nifty. So this is called Also Asked, and it does a very similar thing, but it's very much focused around specific questions. And in this example, and I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see this more clearly. I've sort of mentioned OBS Studio because it's something I talk about from time to time. And it's sort of gives me 4 basic questions and then some additional questions off those as well. So is OBS Studio really free? What's OBS Studio used for? Is it good or bad? Do streamers use OBS Studio? So these are a couple of places that you can start. And again, they both have free options to get started. And I think both of them actually give you sort of 3 free searches, if you know what I mean, per day. So one third thing I'll just mention briefly is the YouTube Studio. So this is actually the YouTube Studio app on my Android phone. I was looking for this functionality on the desktop browser and I couldn't find it, but it might be in there as well. But essentially, they've got this research tab, which is in the analytics section. And you can search for topics and it'll give you top searches for different things. So that can be a really, really useful way of working and just, create a list of the things that you might want to cover in the future.
Yeah. And this is kind of like a side to all of that. I use most of those. I think that's great. Also, you can just find topics by like searching keywords in things like Twitter. Like I literally was on Twitter earlier today, not doing this, and I was looking up a specific platform, and like one of the results that came back was something that baffled my mind so much that somebody had gone to this extent to do what they were doing, and then somebody in the comments was like, "Yeah, how come we have to do it that way?" And I was like, "You don't. You absolutely have made this too hard for yourself." like like that's a thing I could make a video on. So like, yeah, I
it's
mean,
it's
inspiration can come from anywhere.
it's funny you mention that because I don't know, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, a very prominent YouTuber made a video about their vertical video rig, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Mm.
And they wrote some. It was just the way they expressed themselves. Like this was the definitive way of doing it. And I'm like, who on earth is that for? And of course, it was for the the top 2% YouTubers out there.
Uh-huh.
And like it was fine, and it was kind of funny because he actually used my comments to make a subsequent video, which
Oh,
was a
nice.
little weird and not what I was expecting at all.
But that is exactly what I'm saying to do. Find the comments from your community and make more videos out of it. There you go. That's exactly it.
Absolutely. And I'll just check in with the comments again. So, Said saying I like infotainment videos.
Sure.
And we have witnesses. Michelle has said she will definitely come on at some point. So we'll make
that is a
we'll
binding
make
contract.
And another thing. So this will probably lead me into a bit of a rant, so Sam might have to hold me back a little bit. But Michelle writes, my biggest video challenge is getting hung up trying to create YouTube style and not a Michelle style. Trying to be a YouTube style creator took the joy out of things and made me avoid it. This is completely true, and one of the things that sort of frustrates me as someone who's in this video creation space is that every podcast I listen to just goes on and on about how you should be Mr. Beast. And I've got to tell you, none of us are going to be Mr. Beast for a variety of reasons. And I kind of want you to be yourself first and foremost. But I'm not even particularly interested in making videos of that style. For me, it's much more about education and training. But it's such a valid point, because I think a lot of us feel like we have to be a particular way and speak in a particular way. And we did a show on vertical video, and it's hilarious to me that if you go on TikTok, everybody is using the influencer voice. And the minute you hear it, you go, "Oh, I'm being sold something," and you flick it away. So it's much better to actually just do the things that you want to do.
Yeah,
and again, go ahead, Sam.
I would just say, if you ever get to a point where you're not having fun doing the thing you're doing, stop doing it. Like, what's the point? I just watched, there was this TikTok video about affiliate sales, and this girl was saying was saying how she spent like 6 months building out this travel blog website for, to drive affiliate sales, and she hated it. And I was like, yeah, you absolutely stop doing that. Like, if you're not first and foremost like waking up every day and being like, oh, I can't wait to do this thing today. Like, I'm like, oh, it's Friday, I can't wait to friggin' see John and do this show that we do. Yeah, stop doing it. Don't do that. Do something else.
And that's the thing I like to tell people is, unless you've got a sponsor or a boss telling you have to do something, then, within legal and moral considerations, you can pretty much do what you like.
No, even if this is your full-time job. Yes, there are other things to be considered. But even if it is your full-time job, I'm sure there's ways you can change that. If that is really something that you dread doing, I think maybe you need to take a look around.
Absolutely. And saying videos of dancing to K-pop for no reason always work. If you're a good dancer. But the other thing we say about that is, unless you want to be known for dancing,
right.
because that's the thing. You might get really famous for dancing and never want to do that ever again.
No. I actually, case in point, I played a pretty popular character on a TV show that had a very small dancing thing. So when I first got onto TikTok, I was like, well, this makes sense because he danced and there's dancing. I did like 3 videos and I was like, I don't want to do that again. I'm not into it.
Absolutely. Big hello to my good personal friend Angelina Davis, who writes, I would also argue that YouTubers are objectively annoying. So definitely be yourself, lol. We love to see it. And Michelle's saying that now she makes videos her way and people absolutely love them.
Great. Yeah, and I think that comes through. I think when you're actually having fun, like, that shows way more, and like people are way more into it.
And I love all the chat. It's so good to see. Saying, I think if you want to start out with videos, you should create something that you are passionate and confident about. Mm-hmm. The first ones will be crappy, no matter what you do.
Oh no, I disagree. The first 100 will be crappy. The thing is, I think to some extent we all have some kind of perfectionism happening. in the content creation world. So like everything you did 10 videos ago is like the worst video you ever made. And like all you can ever do is try to make something bigger and better next time.
Absolutely. It's funny. I sort of teased during the week that this would be the point at which Sam would say something about AI, but we're actually running a little bit behind time. So if you can say something quickly about AI for idea generation, that would be awesome.
Yeah, no, if for some reason you've taken all of our advice and you're like, I want to make a video this week and the well has run dry. I've talked about every single thing I could possibly think to talk about. I don't know what to talk about anymore. AI. Go, just go. There's a bunch of AIs. You can use Chat GPT, you use a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to drop an affiliate link. This is Go Charlie, which I like. It does a lot of other things. But yeah, you can use that and it'll help you create ideas. You can even, with Go Charlie, the reason I like it is I can attach a file. So I can be like, here's a bunch of things I've done, or here's my answer the public. What can I do? And like, give me 10 new ideas. There you go.
Absolutely. And the reason why I joke about Sam doing that is because I hate AI and I don't touch it with a barge pole. So you do you, but yeah, you can certainly check that out if you like. We'll be back in just a second.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. Mm-hmm. So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I'd talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And that's a segment from Sam's podcast, Just Kidding Around, which you can find out more about over at cuteavalanche.com. So this is the video and live streaming show. We're talking all about creating videos this week, from the initial idea to actually publishing and promoting it. And there's a whole lot happening in the chat, so I just want to check in briefly with that before we go too much further. Okay, cool. So we'll just do this really, really briefly. So I just want to say hi to Lily White, who's a YouTuber from way back.
Wow,
it's great to have your company. Hey, and Ender Trading, who, funnily enough, we actually I mentioned like earlier in the show, so you'll have to go back and listen to that. So thanks for joining us. But let's get back into our content for today. So once we've actually got our ideas and we have a good sense of where we might be going, I think it's really important to think about how you will be recording, how you'll be assembling your content. And I guess, often the first place I like to think about this, Sam, is that, what are you recording to? Are you using a camera? Are you using a point and click thing, a DSLR, even just your phone, some sort of web camera? What sort of things do you think we need to think about in terms of sort of establishing what gear we're going to be using?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this is, what is the final product have to look like? What is our goal? Like if we're looking to create VOD format, then you want to be shooting, 16:9, maybe a DSLR is the way to go, but maybe for whatever reason, a smartphone is going to be the move for you. And I think a lot of those are personal choices, assuming that nobody's dropping money on this being like, I want this to be in 4K and giving you a bunch of variables. You have to make these sort of choices for yourself. Like if you're working with a brand or a sponsor, then a lot of times they will come at you with like, we want this, this, and this. And at least you have that boilerplate of like, okay, I have to fill in, the blanks on a few things, but these are set for me, which is great, which is kind of why I like to have someone in charge of me. Because then I can be like, I don't have to make 100% of the decisions. I just have to make some of them, So when I do like things like UGC videos, oftentimes they'll be like, it's going to be a 9:16, shoot everything on your iPhone. And I'm like, great, that decision has been made for me. Now I just need to, take it to the next step, create the beat sheet and make my production schedule and go from there. So I think, a lot of those are choices that you need to make based on the project itself.
And it's funny because we do talk about constraints a lot on this show, and I think sometimes people don't like the idea of constraints, but the truth is, if you have some of those choices made for you up front, you don't have to expend extra mental energy on them. So it can be really, really useful. Again, say it's just saying use what you already have, so you can upgrade to other things when you work out on that. So. In terms of recording, I guess another consideration is, what are you recording to? Like, are you going to some, an SD card in your camera, for example, or maybe recording directly to your computer? Again, I know, Sam, you do a lot of different content. I record pretty much everything straight to my computer. Like, I have a very desk-orientated situation, and part of the reason for that is because so much of what I do is actually sort of software tutorials, so it makes total sense for me to do that.
I actually have like 3 or 4 different production routines based on what I'm filming. So when we're doing something like this, we're shooting live. Everything is set up in my studio. I don't move any of this stuff around. We record locally. We record individual tracks and this entire thing here. So it's all kind of very confined in how much variation is happening. There's not a lot. And then it's just about organizing those files and editing it down to turn it into a podcast and stuff like that. When I do something like a UGC video for a client, I'm like 100%, 98% of the time shooting just on my phone. And that's going to end up getting edited in CapCut. So I have like a whole transfer process of getting from my phone to CapCut, either through my Mac or my PC, depending on where I am at the time. So there's a little bit of, variation on that workflow. When I do something from, when I used to do like the weird news videos, that was all DSLR. I often had other people involved. And again, that's a completely different workflow to get from the camera to the computer into the hard drive and organized and into the editing software.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think, like, if some people saw the links and the sheer number of things I combine just to make the short clips of this show, like, it probably is overkill. Like, I'm probably just doing too much. Like, I've got my original footage straight out of the camera. I've got audio from the Rodecaster Pro. But again, you just need to figure out what works for you. So, I guess one thing, and this is probably a slight detour, but I think it's worth talking about because this is the video and live streaming show, is that if you are actually live streaming with an intention of repurposing the content, a lot of the tools these days have different options for either isolated recordings and local recordings. But again, it's really worthwhile thinking through the trade-offs of those, because if you do use isolated recordings, and we try to do that mostly for this show within StreamYard, the only thing you do need to consider is that this is sort of uploading not quite in real time, but not too far off it either. So again, that can have some implication for your internet connection. Also, if you are using the sort of the version that's being recorded in the cloud, it may not be the quality, it may not be as in sync as something that's locally recorded on your personal computer.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually had some issues recently with those StreamYard recordings where like your track versus the double, us both together, it was just like a microsecond off. And I wasn't in a very complicated edit. I was using CapCut, and the audio syncing on that is not a great thing. It's not nearly as good as I could do in like Adobe Premiere or Avid. So yeah, it was enough. It wasn't noticeable enough that if I just muted your track, that didn't seem like it was synced enough. Like it didn't look bad, but I could hear it for sure. So that is definitely a thing that happens. And when you're doing stuff with let's call it a cloud-based recording like this, you can run into a problem where that issue will get worse the longer that goes on. So if you're both, if you have a situation where you have a guest and a host and you're both recording locally, you should not run into that kind of problem.
And I guess, like, I do feel compelled to note that the local recordings, the isolated, well, yeah, I guess they're probably isolated recordings, that feature in both Restream and StreamYard is technically still in beta. So,
Yeah.
take that with a grain of salt. But, if you can capture these things, it's probably worthwhile to do so and just make a call about how you'll use them later on. Michelle's just noting that she's had some issues with local recordings too, and I know that she uses StreamYard. But, it's just, these are good things to keep in mind. But I guess if you are recording sort of a VOD, a video on demand, traditional sort of YouTube video, I think it's really important to think about what are the key moments that you actually want to capture, and also what are the supporting moments. So maybe what is the B-roll footage that you want to look for. And I think this is the point at which it can become really useful to have some sort of plan or a script or a storyboard, depending on, how elaborate what you're doing actually is. And I should, Sam, you've recently made some videos about I'm guessing a local to you coffee brands, where you played a number of different characters within a skit. So maybe can you talk to us a little bit about how you actually made sure that you had everything you needed and you set up those scenes so you were good to go when you came to edit?
Yeah, I didn't. No, I did, and then I actually still ended up having to reshoot one of them because I just didn't like it. But yeah, like I've talked about this a lot in the past. Like when you're doing anything that's more complicated than go live and then cut it up later, like script out as much as you possibly can, and then go through that script, and you're going to give it the Hollywood treatment of finding everything that is in a specific location, and then everything that's going to be shot at a specific, shot. So like a close up or a medium shot. I want to get all of those things. Thankfully, with that particular video, I was looking at, like I don't know, was that a minute long at the most or something like that? So it was really a bunch of one take, shots where I would just repeat the whole script because it wasn't that much. I had a teleprompter set up, and I would put that off to where the eye line should line up for, hey, it's me from the future. So I could just do it that way. But yeah, you want to shoot all of the things to, you're not going to go back and forth and be like, okay, here's the first line of me over here dressed up in the future, and then I talk to this guy, so now I have to go do that. You're shooting all of those things at once, all of the Sam from the present close-ups shot in one shot, then you do the medium shot, then flip it, get dressed as Sam from the future, shoot all of those medium shots and close-ups after that, so you're not breaking down and setting up a million times over. Anything you can do to minimize your workload is in your best interest.
And I guess in that example, like you being the entire talent for everything, like it's inconvenient for you to maybe go back and reshoot some of that stuff. But it may not physically be possible if you're working with other people and gear that's being hired.
Yes.
Like you really need to make sure you have what you need, because you can't just go back and sort of recreate it. And I guess one thing that I see a lot in traditional TV advertising is that they clearly do a whole bunch of variations on the basic script, and sometimes there'll be a 30-second version, and sometimes there'll be a 5-second version, and like they will just get all kinds of variations, and that may be something that's worthwhile for you depending on your project.
Yeah, that's actually something that, especially with these sort of UGC videos that I do a lot of, which is I try and over deliver. Like I make whatever the promise is that I know I can accomplish in whatever the time frame is, and then I give them more. So, and generally the way that is that they ask for a certain amount of stuff, and then I will ad lib 3 or 4 or 5 new hooks to that video. So they could theoretically cut it down and make it a different video altogether as well. Sometimes there'll be other ad libs throughout, but yeah, I mean, like that is one trick that will like really help you take one piece of content and make 4 pieces of content from it, is just changing the hook.
And I feel like I keep using this as an example, but it scares the hell out of me. Like you just hear these stories about people having all the talent, all the camera crew, everybody there, and it turns out that the batteries in the wireless mics weren't working that day, and it's like, maybe you can overdub something there, but it's just so painful. So again, it's worth making sure you've got all your ducks in a row.
Yeah, I mean, and test. Like always test. Like everything always changes, and a new thing goes wrong every time, no matter what it is. Something new will go wrong. I remember when I first got my Zoom, I went to, which is a portable audio recorder for anyone who doesn't know. I went to VidCon, and I like straight out interviewed someone, had not played with that Zoom before, and nothing recorded on it. But I have the video, which has no audio track to it. So that was cool.
Absolutely. So we're going to come back in a second and talk about actually putting together all those various takes that you've got. So this is the video and live streaming show.
Hi, I'm John Lacey, and in Build a Presentation Muscle, I want to talk about finding your voice, refining and sharing your message, using tools and technology to share that message, and looking after yourself as a creator.
That's a bit of a plug for my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. But today on the show, we're talking all about creating a video from that initial idea all the way to actually publishing and promoting it. And let me just switch to our new tab because I forgot to do that in all the excitement. So we're going to go to the Edit tab right now. So let's talk about actually putting things together. And I guess the first thing that's probably worth knowing is how are you going to edit? Like what editing tool are you going to use? And, we already heard some love for DaVinci Resolve in the chat. There are all kinds of things out there. And to be really honest with you, I don't think it matters too much which one you use as long as you know how to use it well. And one of the things that I see a lot is, there's all kinds of marketing and the fear of missing out is being promoted. But I just feel like you lose so much if you spend your whole life jumping from tool to tool because you'll never get the muscle memory, the experience to use those properly. But we're going to talk about one in specific, well, probably a couple in a moment. But I guess, Sam, like, what do you think people need to know when they first approach an editing tool?
I mean, I think before you even get into the tool, be organized about your files. Like one of the things that I like to do is I have like a folder structure on my desktop that has all of the different, things. So like B-roll goes into its own folder, capture, which is this kind of thing where it's me talking to the camera, that kind of thing goes its own folder, and so on and so forth, sound effects, whatever. And then follow that structure inside your editing software. Almost every software I know will allow you to replicate some sort of folder structure. And then you do like sort of rounds of edits. I like to do like what I call my assistant at my AE edit, which is your draft. You just kind of get broad strokes of like, here's big chunks of, I know I have all of the pieces I need. And then you can start to finesse. And at some point, I usually grab a music track so I can start to make those finesses even more tight to a specific soundtrack, which will give it a little more of whatever emotion I'm trying to drive at that point. And then once I've got all of the cutting down, you can go in to do things like your auto captions, your auto captions either way, depending on what you're doing, and adding any kind of like effects and transitions and graphics on top of that.
Absolutely. And I guess, before we even get to the editing software, one thing you may need to consider is like, are you actually collecting assets from other people? And that could be other video, that could be audio, that could be music, that could be images. And like how you actually plan to do that. And obviously we have some great tools out there in the form of Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive, and I'm forgetting one of them, Dropbox is another famous option that you can certainly use. But I guess one of the things, and speaking of specific video editors, one of the cool things about CapCut, and CapCut is a free video, well, mostly free, there is a premium option there. But it's basically free. It's cross-platform. You can use it on Apple, Windows, on your mobile device as well. And one of the really nifty things about this is that they have what they call CapCut spaces. So you can essentially create a workspace that you can share with other CapCut users, and they can make changes to that. It's funny, we did it when we did an entire show on CapCut. They literally just released this feature earlier that morning. And it's been really handy for us because I know a little while ago, Sam was making a demonstration video on something and it just picked up the wrong microphone, which is such a thing that happens to all of us all the time. But he sent me sort of a link to the CapCut space. I sort of rendered it and took it into Adobe Podcast, of all things, to fix it up a little bit. So it's great in that sense because you can share it collaboratively. People can make changes to it. But it could also be just a useful way of showing, like, the clients, for example, if you are making some content that they need to approve as well. So...
yeah, and it does individual file transfer or an entire project. So like John said, like I could straight out send an entire project over. He can make changes and like refresh the upload, and then I'll see all those changes on my end, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's really cool. And again, there are all kinds of tools out there. I use Camtasia for a lot of my editing because it is sort of optimized for that screen capture that I do so much of. And I do like their library feature, although the thing I did learn this week is that you have to be a little bit careful about how much stuff you're storing in your Camtasia library. I had like 327 gigabytes worth of stuff, and I'm wondering why my hard drive is suddenly full. So make sure you go back and check that stuff. But I guess in terms of actually using, video editing software to tell a story or maybe set some expectations or create intrigue, what are some of the techniques, Sam, that we might employ to actually make our content a little bit more compelling?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, like you choose your music wisely and, make sure that applies to the emotion you're trying to give that video and that story. You don't want to put the happy, fun music in like a like a horror setting. I mean, maybe you do actually. Who knows? But yeah, just be mindful of that sort of thing and your aesthetic in general. There's a lot of little, things you can do to set the mood and carry that around.
Absolutely, and I guess the other thing is, we can sort of use sort of pacing and maybe you tease somebody with some content that happens at later on in the video initially, just to grab them in and have some kind of hook, and maybe set up a question mark in the viewer's mind just to open that loop and maybe close it later on.
Yeah, I mean, I think. No, I think a lot of that also comes at the in the sort of ideation, research, planning phase of like when you're creating what you're creating, like knowing that opening line, what that hook is going to be, and like how you want to present that, and what the visual behind it will be as well. And like in today's day and age, there's been a big sort of shift in how people start online content specifically, but I've even seen this in television to some extent, where there used to be a lot more sort of teasing of like, this is what we're going to get to. But now I think it's very go, go, go. And what we want to see is like, this is the thing. This is a cake that looks like a Louis Vuitton bag. And then how did we get there? Here is the problem. And now how do we fix it?
And I guess especially on a lot of the vertical short form platforms, like you are just being served up random things and you kind of have to sell whatever you're trying to do in the first 1 or 2 seconds, really.
Oh, yeah.
So, it may be a different edit for that as opposed to maybe a more traditional video on demand on YouTube or what have you. So it's a great way of doing that. I guess, especially as we head towards spooky season, things like creating that atmosphere with the sound effects and the music, maybe even thinking about the coloring of your, or the color correction of your video as well. A lot of sort of dark and ominous things potentially happening out there as well. So those are certainly great things. But I guess the other thing that is probably worthwhile thinking about in terms of actual editing is, what are the repurposing options? So again, we sort of already mentioned that maybe if you are on a recording day, maybe you do want to have a few different variations on the theme. But I guess obviously we can convert between vertical video and horizontal video. We can have shorter segments and longer segments. Is there anything that you think we should keep in mind in that regard, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, time-wise, keep in mind that, anything over a minute is really not, especially on YouTube, it's no longer considered a short. It just shows up as a VOD. Take this with a grain of salt because this was another creator who did his own sort of study on this, but the ideal times for vertical video are 13 seconds or 60 seconds. So those are the ones that performed best. And again, yeah, you want to set up a very strong hook, and then you want to deliver on that. You don't want to dilly-dally with like playing around and stuff. Like you have to really start to deliver on whatever you're promising for that video immediately. I had another point, and then I dilly-dallied and I lost my own point.
Maybe it'll come back to you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to note that Lily in the chat is mentioning video thumbnails, and we're going to talk about those when we come back in just a moment.
If you've been watching us for a while, or this is your first time and you're thinking, Sam, John, this is great stuff, but I'm wearing a lot of hats already and I don't need to add this to my list of things that I'm doing, but I really want to live stream, I've got you covered. I've been a freelance technical director and stream operator for 20 years, and I can help you either with one-on-one counseling, setups of shows, or even run your whole show for you. Get in touch with me, samproof@gmail.com, or find out more at samproof.tv. I know that guy.
I was just thinking you look different, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was, but I think it was the lack of headphones. But yes,
no, my
if
hair
you are
was
looking
down.
for a live stream producer, Sam can really help you out in that regard. So reach out to him in all the various places. But let's talk about actually promoting our content, because it's one thing to create your video, but like if no one ever gets a chance to see it, like what is the point? So I guess the first thing I would probably encourage people to think about is like, where is your video going to actually live? Where is it going to reside? Is it just going to be in one place and you potentially send all the people to that destination? Or do you maybe share it on different social media platforms more natively? And I guess there are a few different considerations in terms of that. And it probably comes back to the video goals, but probably also your personal goals or your business goals as well. So, Sam, how do you think that we should think about that? Because I know it's been a bit of a running gag on this show ever since we started that we say, don't be everywhere all at once.
Right.
And then I come back and say, yeah, but if you got the video, just upload it and see what happens.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing is like, it's a balance between how much free time do you have and can you make it work on that whatever site it's going on to. I think even if, I don't know, is that the statement I want to make? Okay, if you have the video, sure, if you have the free time, throw it out to every single thing. But you do need to like be able to follow up, like see what comments are coming in on those platforms and answer all of those comments. If you've gotten to the point where you're too busy, then either you need to cut back on those platforms or hire someone to do that for you. Right. But yeah, I think even if you do throw it up to 12 different platforms, you should have some knowledge in your head of like the main one that I'm actually focusing on is this, because you need to be clear on that.
Absolutely. And I guess like for me, I'm trying to prioritize sort of LinkedIn and YouTube over all else. But I do share a lot of content on Twitter and all the millions of Twitter clones that are out there, sure, and Instagram and Facebook and different places. But again, in some ways my goal is to keep people on LinkedIn, but if they're not on LinkedIn, my goal is to push them to YouTube. So again, and a lot of that comes back to I want to get to 1,000 subscribers one day and unlock all those features. I think I'm at 79 right now, so it's probably a little way off, but But, you know, if you do know that those are your strategic goals, you can sort of build towards them in that fashion. So it's definitely worth sort of having a sense of that and working on, you know, where you're actually headed. And Lily mentioned earlier in the chat, the thumbnails are important. I guess that's the next point that I want to make, is that your video project isn't just a single video file. It's a lot more than that. It sort of includes things like the thumbnail, your title, your description, any captioning resources, any text that you write about the video, whether that is part of maybe a YouTube description, whether that's maybe social media messages. It's really worthwhile sort of collecting all this stuff and keeping it in a central location that you can find again, because I guess the other thing too is you might want to repost this content at another time down the track. Like, you know, if some social media platforms are quite ephemeral, they'll show your stuff for a day or two, and you know, people will really need to go looking for it again. So, are there any other things that you think we should think about in terms of a video package?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, your thumbnail is very important. Your title and description, and even within your description, I think you should, on like YouTube, I feel like it is one of the most underutilized parts of the video is that YouTube video description, because it gives you so many characters worth of space to utilize. So like, really use that. I like, yeah, Lily says SEO tags. I really like, if I have a chance, to go into that YouTube description and we have our initial sort of paragraph about what this video is actually about. And then I'll go in and add like a bunch of, these are questions from either Answer the Public or something like that. And here are the answers, as I would say in this video, so that, you know, it kind of picks up those things in SEO. And then after all of that, I'll do a sort of boilerplate chunk that is about me. And then you have 3 hashtags that you can put into a YouTube video. So definitely use those. If you use more than that, it just kind of ignores them as far as being clickable. But probably there's still SEO in there. And then they say that the YouTube tags keywords are like really low weight, but they're still there. So it might be worth using it. And if you're doing regular niche content, you can create through, what do I use? TubeBuddy. You can create sort of like a clipboard block of like standard keywords that you'll use, like live stream, YouTube, Twitch, whatever it is. And then it just puts all those in at the click of a button for you. And then, yeah, you do all of your social media. And I think, again, an underutilized thing is the YouTube community tab when it's working correctly, which we've ranted about earlier today. Not today. And yeah, like if you've got a newsletter, use that newsletter and either post links or embed your video into that. I don't know how much that affects those sort of spam filters that are out there, so be cautious. But yeah, like there's just so much you can do. So the biggest advice I would give on any of this is to create a master doc that says, these are the things I'm going to do whenever I do content. And then you can create like a Trello for your workflow, and then sort of make checklists and columns for that project to go through, which I just did one for this show, and it's intense.
Absolutely. So, you know, and obviously different platforms are going to have different options. I guess the thing that YouTube themselves sort of say about the tags as opposed to the hashtags is that that's a great place to put misspellings. So,
yes,
you know, if there are popular misspellings, if there are variations on the way that you describe things, I always describe live stream as a single word, but I do try to go in and sort of have that as a variation there as well. Yeah. So once and again, different video platforms will give you different options, so it's worth exploring those. But I guess once it's out there, you know, think about how you can actually share that link and with whom. And it could be as simple as just DMing somebody a link and saying, hey, I made this. I thought you might be interested in it. It could be adding something to your email signature. It could be sharing it on social media. again, I think the thing I know about most content creators is they can be really self-conscious about sharing things. So I really want to encourage you to get over that, because the social media algorithms are so fickle. People aren't going to see stuff unless you keep bringing it to their attention.
Yeah.
And often you can, if you're tired of just saying, here's my video and here's a link, think
don't
about the
do
subject
that.
matter. Yeah, think
Like,
think about the subject matter. Think about, some part of it you can actually call out.
Yeah. Answer a question, solve a problem, give a fact or a tidbit, and then put the video on there. I think I can't remember what Jeff's last name is, but I think one of my favorite things is on Twitter, and I believe you follow Jeff as well. Jeff is a YouTube expert, and he will do that. He will do a post that is like, here's a problem and a solution, and he doesn't promote anything in that initial post, but he replies to himself with, if you found this useful, head over to my website, and there, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's great. So like anything you can do that is not in itself spammy on the surface, and then you give a little, anyway. But that also reminds me, I like to go in when possible on a live stream or a YouTube video, add a pinned comment so that you have something at the top that everyone can see right away. And that should have some sort of question or call to action in it as well.
And I guess the other thing, and maybe we need to just do another show on YouTube, but again, if you do, you can use those related video cards. You can use the end titles. There are all kinds of things that you can explore, and obviously there are a million social media platforms out there. In Some New Doodles writes, Blue Sky is slowly getting bigger. It's funny. I've been on there a while, and you get given invite codes from time to time, and some weeks I haven't been able to give them away, and other times I have 50 people banging on my door to try and get access. And Lily is just saying that she shares on IG and X, although I refuse to call it X, but what I mean,
too.
Twitter. I need to get more into just shorts to share on TikTok and make shorts of full videos here. Yeah, those are definitely worth exploring.
Yeah, and we've done an entire show about vertical videos pretty recently, so you can check that out in our archives. For that, I would say, the thing with vertical videos, obviously, I don't know if this is obvious, but a lot of those trends start on TikTok, then kind of move over to Instagram, and then find their way to YouTube. So there's like this trickle down trend thing happening. But yeah, I think it's great. And I've basically seen the same numbers on all three of those platforms. Plus I do a few others, which are disappointingly 10x whenever I do a VOD right now. But at the same time, I'm like, that took me a minute to make and it got 300 views. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And, there are so many considerations, and we don't have time for me to get on my soapbox today, so just go and check out that video in the archives. But thank you so much for joining us. There's been so much happening in the chat today. We really love to see it. But Sam, as we begin to wrap up, where can people find out more about you and see your content and all that good stuff?
Yeah, you can find me over at samproof.tv, and all of my social links are in the top left there, pretty much prioritized in order of how much I use them. So you can find me on all of those platforms, or hire me for jobs. And if you like cats, head over to cuteavalanche.com and find one of our 2 different 24/7 kitten cams. Back to John.
Yes, so if you need some more cuteness in your life, that's a great place to start. If you want to learn more about me and anything I'm doing and all the OBS studio tutorials and stuff, you can head over to johnlacey.com, and there are links to all the various places at the bottom, actually in the footer of that website. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. It's been great to have your company. Really enjoyed the conversation in the chat. If there are particular topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please let us know wherever you're watching this, and we'll certainly love to explore those. And I need to remember to do this, because when I tell people to do this, they often actually do it. Like and subscribe to wherever you may be watching this. We do go out to literally all of the places. So, stay in touch. All right. So have a great weekend and a great week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Stay strong.